there is a moment, a very specific, electric, spine-tingling moment that happens to certain people. It doesn't happen in a church. It doesn't happen during a meditation retreat or while reading a self-help book with a golden cover. It happens when you are alone. It happens when the world is quiet, when the noise of everyone else's expectations has finally gone silent, and you feel something stir inside your chest like a fire that was never truly extinguished, just waiting for the right season, waiting for the right storm. You feel it now, don't you? That quiet, persistent pull towards something larger than the life you were handed. That sense, not arrogance, not delusion, but a deep and ancient knowing that you were not placed on this earth to simply exist and disappear. You feel it when you wake up in the middle of the night and stare at the ceiling and think, there has to be more than this. You feel it when you watch someone else succeed, and instead of bitterness, you feel recognition, like watching a mirror from across the room. That feeling is not random. That feeling is not accidental. That feeling is a message transmitted across centuries, encoded in the very biology of your being, placed there by ancestors so formidable that the universe itself took notice of their passage. Today, we are going to talk about what that feeling means. We are going to talk about legacy, about genetics, about spiritual selection, about the invisible thread that connects your blood to some of the most powerful human beings who ever walked this earth. And we are going to ask a question that may permanently alter the way you see yourself. Paragraph 2. 800 years ago, on the vast and windswept steppes of Central Asia, a man named Tenjin was born into nothing. Not metaphorical nothing, actual nothing. He was born into poverty, abandonment, enslavement, and humiliation. His father was poisoned when he was a child. His family was cast out by their own tribe and left to survive the brutal Mongolian winters with almost no resources. He was kidnapped. He was enslaved. He wore a wooden yoke around his neck as a symbol of his defeat by every measurable standard of his time. Tenjin was supposed to die in obscurity. He was supposed to be a footnote, or not even that. He was supposed to be nothing. And yet, something inside this man refused. Something inside him burned so fiercely that no amount of external darkness could smother it. He did not simply survive his suffering, he metabolized it. He turned every wound into a weapon, every humiliation into fuel, every enemy into a teacher. And over the course of his extraordinary life, Tenjin, who would come to be known as Genghis Khan, the universal ruler, built the largest contiguous land empire in the history of human civilization. He conquered more territory than any military leader before or after him. He reshaped religions, trade routes, languages, governments, and the genetic makeup of the entire human species. And science, hard, peer-reviewed, genetic science tells us something almost incomprehensible about this man's reach into the future. Approximately 16 million people alive today carry his direct genetic lineage. 16 million people walking the earth right now with his blood in their veins. Paragraph 3. Let us sit with that number for a moment. because the mind genuinely struggles to process it. 16 million living descendants, and scientists believe that at the peak of his dynasty's reach, roughly 8% of men across a vast swath of Asia from the Pacific coast to the Caspian Sea shared a specific Y chromosome haplotype that traces directly back to Genghis Khan and his male relatives. 8%. In some regions, the number climbs even higher. A 2003 study published in the American Journal of Human Genetics titled "The Genetic Legacy of the Mongols" sent shockwaves through the scientific community, precisely because of how staggering the numbers were. The researchers identified what they called a star cluster, a pattern of genetic markers that exploded outward from a single founding ancestor in a way that is statistically almost impossible under normal reproductive circumstances. This was not natural drift. This was not coincidence. This was the genetic signature of a man and a lineage so dominant, so prolific, so utterly unstoppable in their expansion, that they left a permanent mark on the human genome itself, not just in history books, not just in the ruins of the cities they conquered, in the actual living DNA of millions of people breathing air on this planet right now. The empire crumbled, the cities were rebuilt, the languages shifted, but the blood persisted. The blood always persists. And if you are watching this video today, if something in you resonated with the word chosen, there is a spiritual truth here that goes even deeper than genetics. Paragraph 4. Here is where we must make a critical distinction, because this is not a video about ethnic superiority or national pride, or any ideology that divides humanity. Those frameworks are small. They are the thinking of frightened people who need external groups to feel elevated. That is not what we are exploring here. What we are exploring is something far more universal, far more profound, and far more personally relevant to you regardless of where you were born, what language you speak, or what your ancestry looks like on paper. The story of Genghis Khan is not fundamentally a story about one man or one people. It is a story about what happens when a human being refuses to accept the limitations that the world has decided are appropriate for them. It is a story about the alchemy of suffering, the mysterious and magnificent process by which the most broken circumstances become the forge in which the most unbreakable characters are shaped. Every single one of us carries within us the lineage of survivors. Think about this with genuine seriousness for a moment. Every single ancestor you have, every one of them, going back through all of human history, survived. Every plague, every war, every famine, every brutal winter, every predator, every political upheaval, every personal catastrophe that threatened to end the line, they survived it all. You are not here by accident. You are here because an unbroken chain of resilient, resourceful, determined human beings refuse to be extinguished. That chain runs through you. That chain is you. Paragraph 5. The concept of the chosen one appears in virtually every spiritual tradition on earth. And this is not a coincidence. It is not a primitive fantasy invented by people who needed comfort. It is a recognition of something real, something that human consciousness has been trying to articulate since we first sat our day around fires and told stories about ourselves. In Abrahamic traditions, prophets are called before they understand why. Moses resists his calling. Jonah runs from his. Abraham leaves everything he knows on the basis of an inner prompting that makes no rational sense. In Eastern traditions, the concept of dharma, your sacred duty, the specific path that your soul came here to walk, is considered not a preference but a calling, a cosmic assignment that exists whether you acknowledge it or not. In the shamanic traditions of the very steppes where Genghis Khan was born, leaders were understood not to choose power, but to be chosen by it, selected by the spirit world, marked from birth, and shaped through suffering for a purpose that only becomes clear in retrospect. The hero's journey, as mythologist Joseph Campbell documented across hundreds of cultures, always begins the same way, with an ordinary person who does not feel ordinary, with someone who knows, at a level beneath words, that they were made for something specific. That knowledge is not ego, that knowledge is calling. And the first great challenge of every chosen one is not the dragon they must slay. It is the doubt they must silence long enough to take the first step toward the door. Paragraph 6. Let's talk about what being chosen actually feels like from the inside, because it almost never feels the way movies portray it. It does not feel like lightning from the sky. It does not feel like a booming voice from the heavens. It does not feel like sudden clarity and confidence and a perfectly articulated sense of purpose. Being chosen, in the real lived human experience, feels like restlessness. It feels like a low-grade dissatisfaction with a life that everyone around you seems perfectly content with. It feels like you are living in a costume that doesn't quite fit, like you are performing a version of yourself that was designed by other people's expectations rather than your own inner truth. It feels like waking up in the middle of the night with your heart pounding, not from nightmares, but from ideas, from visions, from a sense of urgency that has no clear object but refuses to be dismissed. It feels like looking at your current circumstances and knowing, not hoping, not wishing, but knowing that this is not the final chapter, that there is something being built inside you that the world hasn't seen yet, that your greatest contribution is still ahead of you, not behind. Genghis Khan felt this. Every great leader, artist, entrepreneur, healer, and revolutionary in history felt this. The chosen feeling is uncomfortable before it is empowering. It disturbs before it directs. And most people medicate that discomfort away with distraction, with cynicism, with the seductive comfort of settling for a smaller life that requires less courage. Paragraph 7. Here is a truth that the spiritual traditions have always known and that modern psychology is only now beginning to catch up to. Your trauma is not your enemy. Your wounds are not the proof that you were abandoned by the universe. Your suffering is not evidence that you chose the wrong path or that something has gone irreparably wrong with your story. Your suffering, if you are willing to look at it with the right eyes, is the curriculum. It is the specific, personalized training program that was designed to develop in you precisely the qualities that your purpose requires. Genghis Khan's early life was catastrophic by any measure. He lost his father to poisoning at age 9. He watched his family nearly starve. He was enslaved. He was humiliated. He was betrayed by people he trusted with his life. And what did all of that produce? It produced a leader who understood poverty and therefore valued loyalty over gold. It produced a strategist who had survived the most brutal conditions and therefore feared nothing his enemies could throw at him. It produced a man with such radical empathy for the suffering of the powerless that he implemented meritocracy in his armies at a time when birthright determined everything because he had been on the wrong side of birthright, and he knew its injustice from the inside. Every wound became a wisdom. Every loss became a lesson. Every period of darkness became the laboratory in which a specific capacity was developed. This is the alchemy of the chosen. They do not escape suffering. They transform it. Paragraph 8. Now I want to speak directly to the person who is watching this and thinking, this doesn't apply to me. I'm not special. I'm not chosen. I'm just a regular person trying to get through the week. I want to speak directly to that version of you, and I want to say something with complete seriousness and complete love. That thought is the most dangerous thing about you, not your circumstances, not your past mistakes, not your enemies, not the systems that may have worked against you. The most dangerous thing about you is the belief that you are ordinary, because that belief is not humility. Humility is accurate self-assessment. Humility is knowing your strengths and your limitations with equal clarity. What you are describing when you say I'm just a regular person is not humility, it is a protective story. It is a story you tell yourself so that you never have to risk the terrifying act of trying to become who you actually are. Because if you try, you might fail, and if you fail, it will hurt, and if it hurts, you will have to admit that you cared about something deeply, and caring deeply, when you have been hurt before, feels like the most dangerous thing in the world. So we call it humility. We call it realism. We call it being practical. And we shrink. We make ourselves smaller and smaller until the pain of not becoming feels more manageable than the risk of trying. But hear me. The universe does not make ordinary. The universe in 14 billion years of explosive, creative, relentless becoming has never once produced an ordinary anything. Every particle is in motion. Every life form is a miracle of improbable complexity. And every human being carries within them a universe of unexplored potential. Paragraph 9. Let us go deeper into the science for a moment, because the spiritual and the scientific are not opposites. They are two languages describing the same reality. Epigenetics, one of the most revolutionary fields in modern biology, has fundamentally changed how we understand the relationship between genes and lived experience. For most of the 20th century, we believed that our DNA was fixed fate. You were born with a genetic blueprint, and that blueprint determined who you were and what you were capable of. Period. Full stop. End of conversation. Epigenetics shattered that model. What epigenetic research has demonstrated is that the environment, including our experiences, our emotions, our choices, and crucially, the experiences of our ancestors can switch genes on and off without changing the underlying DNA sequence. The genetic code is not a sentence, it is a library, and which books get opened depends enormously on circumstances, on choices, on stress, on love, on challenge, on meaning. This means that the experiences of your ancestors, their triumphs and their traumas, their courage and their suffering may have literally shaped which of your genes are currently active. The resilience that your great-grandparents developed surviving historical catastrophes may be running in your cellular machinery right now. The adaptations that allowed your ancestors to survive plagues and famines and wars may be expressed in your immune system, your stress response, your capacity for endurance. You are not just carrying your ancestors' blood, you may be carrying their activated capabilities. Paragraph 10. The Mongolian shamanic tradition, the spiritual world from which Genghis Khan emerged, had a concept called Heaven's Mandate. It was the belief that certain individuals were selected by the eternal blue sky, what they called Tungri, for a specific purpose that served not just their tribe but the larger cosmic order. This was not considered arrogance. It was considered responsibility. The person who received heaven's mandate was not elevated above their people. They were placed in service to their people. Their gifts were not for their own comfort or glory. Their gifts were for the healing, the expansion, and the elevation of everyone their life touched. This is the deepest truth about what it means to be chosen, and it is the truth that separates authentic spiritual calling from mere ego inflation. The chosen one is not the one who takes the most. The chosen one is the one who gives the most, who serves the most, who endures the most in the service of something larger than themselves. Genghis Khan, for all the violence and destruction of his campaigns, created the Pax Mongolica, a period of unprecedented peace and trade across the largest empire in human history. He established religious tolerance centuries before it became a Western value. He built postal systems, diplomatic immunity, free trade across continents. The destruction was real and it was terrible, but so was the creation, so was the opening of the Silk Road, so was the connection of East and West, so was the transmission of paper, printing, gunpowder, and countless other technologies that fueled the Renaissance. Even in the most violent of chosen ones, there was a larger purpose being served. Paragraph 11. I want to talk about the concept of lineage, not just genetic lineage, but spiritual lineage, because you are part of multiple lineages simultaneously. You carry the biological lineage of your direct ancestors. Yes, but you also carry the lineage of every teacher who shaped you, every book that broke you open, every experience that expanded your capacity to feel and to think and to act. You carry the lineage of every person who loved you well enough to show you what love looks like. You carry the lineage of every adversary who challenged you hard enough to reveal capacities you didn't know you had. You carry the lineage of every stranger whose act of courage or kindness planted a seed in your consciousness that is still growing. This is what the spiritual traditions mean when they talk about the cloud of witnesses, the vast invisible community of beings whose lives contributed to the person you are becoming. And you, right now, are contributing to the lineages that will shape people who have not yet been born. The choices you make today, whether to rise or to settle, whether to do the difficult work of becoming or the comfortable work of coasting, will reverberate forward through time in ways you cannot see and may never fully know. Your children, if you have them, will carry the epigenetic signature of your choices. Your students, your colleagues, your readers, your audiences, they will carry forward whatever it is that you were brave enough to transmit. Every chosen one is a link in a chain, and the chain is only as strong as your willingness to be fully what you are. Paragraph 12. There is a specific kind of loneliness that the chosen feel, and it is important to name it, because if you have felt it, you may have mistakenly concluded that something is wrong with you. It is the loneliness of operating at a frequency that not everyone around you can hear. It is the loneliness of caring about things deeply while others seem indifferent. It is the loneliness of seeing possibilities in situations that others have dismissed as fixed. It is the loneliness of needing to grow faster and further than the environments you were born into can comfortably contain. Genghis Khan felt this loneliness. He was, by every account, a man of extraordinary relational depth. He valued loyalty above all things. He formed profound bonds with his generals and his wives. He was known for his capacity for both ruthlessness and extraordinary tenderness, and yet he was fundamentally alone in the way that all visionaries are alone, operating from a vision of what could be that constantly outpaced the reality of what was. This loneliness is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of magnitude. It is the space between who you are becoming and who the world has yet recognized you to be. Every great human being spent significant time in this space. Every prophet, every artist, every scientist, every revolutionary who changed the shape of the world went through periods of profound isolation during which the only thing sustaining them was the inner certainty of their calling. That certainty is yours too. Trust it, guard it, heed it. Paragraph 13. Let's talk about the enemies of the chosen. And I don't mean external enemies. External enemies are almost gifts. External opposition clarifies. External pressure reveals what you are made of. The enemies I am talking about are internal. They are the voices inside your own mind that have adopted the language of your greatest critics and your most limiting experiences and made a home in the architecture of your self-concept. The first is the voice of unworthiness, the voice that says, "Who do you think you are?" This voice is sophisticated. It doesn't always sound like attack. Sometimes it sounds like caution. Sometimes it sounds like wisdom. Be realistic. It says, be practical. Don't get too big for your boots. Remember where you came from. And all of those phrases, when they come from that voice, are poison dressed as medicine. They are the voice of everyone who was ever afraid of your light trying to extinguish it before it became too bright to ignore. The second internal enemy is perfectionism, the belief that you must be fully formed before you begin, that you must have it all figured out before you take the first step, that your gifts must be polished to impossible shine before you dare share them with the world. Perfection is not a standard. It is a hiding place. It is a way of avoiding the vulnerability of being seen while telling yourself you are simply being responsible. Genghis Khan did not wait until he was fully prepared. He moved with what he had. He learned it in motion. He adapted in real time. And he became great not in the preparation but in the doing. Paragraph 14. Here is something the spiritual traditions and the sciences of human performance have both confirmed. From completely different directions, purpose is the most powerful force available to human beings. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps and wrote Men's Search for Meaning, observed that the prisoners most likely to survive were not necessarily the strongest or the healthiest. They were the ones with a clear, compelling sense of why, the ones who had something to live for, a person to return to, a work to complete, a meaning to transmit. Purpose, Frankl concluded, is not a luxury of comfortable people. It is a survival mechanism of the highest order, and the neuroscience backs this up completely. A brain operating with a clear sense of purpose shows measurably different patterns of activity than one operating without it. The default mode network, the part of the brain associated with rumination, anxiety, and self-referential thinking, quiets down when we are engaged in purposeful action. The prefrontal cortex, associated with creative problem-solving and long-term planning, becomes more active. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter of motivation, anticipation, and reward, is released not just when we achieve goals, but when we pursue them with genuine engagement. Your biology literally functions better when you are operating in alignment with your purpose. The chosen one is not chosen because they are superior. They are chosen because their alignment with purpose unlocks capacities that remain dormant in those who have not yet found their why. Paragraph 15. I want to address something that comes up every time we talk about concepts like destiny, calling, or the chosen. Someone always raises the question of free will. If I was chosen, if my destiny was somehow written into my bloodline or my soul or the cosmic order, then what is the role of my choices? Am I just playing out a script? Am I just a character in a story that was already written? This is a false dilemma, and resolving it is essential. Think of it this way: a river has a nature. It flows toward the sea. That is its destination, its purpose, its calling, but the path it takes is entirely its own, carved by its own momentum, shaped by the terrain it encounters, diverted by dams and redirected by valleys. No two rivers take exactly the same path, even if they share the same mountain source and the same ocean destination. You have a nature. You have gifts that are genuinely yours, not chosen by your ego, but given by the specific combination of genetics, early experience, and spiritual design that produced you, and you have a destination, a general direction of becoming that represents your highest expression of those gifts in service to the world. But the path is yours to carve. Every choice is real. Every decision matters. Every day you either move toward or away from alignment with your deepest nature. Destiny is not a cage. Destiny is a compass. It tells you true north. You still decide how you walk. Paragraph 16. Now let's talk about activation, because knowing you are chosen is only the beginning, and it is, in fact, the easy part. The knowledge without the activation is just a pleasant story you tell yourself while your life remains unchanged. Activation is the process of consciously, deliberately, and courageously aligning your daily choices with the calling you feel inside you. Activation looks like waking up earlier than feels comfortable, because you know the morning hours are when your truest self has access to clarity. It looks like doing the work even when no one is watching and no one is applauding, and you have no guarantee that it will ever amount to anything. It looks like having the difficult conversations with yourself, with the people in your life, with your own most comfortable habits that must be had if you are going to become who you are meant to be. It looks like investing in your own development, not as a luxury but as a sacred responsibility. It looks like treating your body, the vehicle of your purpose, with the respect and attention it deserves. It looks like reading the books that challenge you rather than the ones that confirm you. It looks like seeking out the mentors, the communities, and the experiences that will accelerate your growth, rather than the relationships and environments that will keep you safe and small. Genghis Khan did not become Genghis Khan by wishing he were someone greater. He became Genghis Khan by making, every single day, in the most brutal and unforgiving circumstances imaginable, the choices of a man who intended to matter. Paragraph 17. There is a powerful concept in Jungian psychology called individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are as distinct from who you were shaped to be by family, culture, trauma, and conditioning. Jung believed that individuation was not just a psychological process, but a spiritual one, the fulfillment of the soul's deepest purpose, which is to express itself as fully and as authentically as possible within the constraints of a human life. He believed that the unconscious, the vast, dark, teeming world beneath the surface of our awareness, was not an enemy but a partner, that it was constantly sending signals through dreams, through symptoms, through inexplicable attractions and repulsions, through the patterns of what we repeatedly create and destroy in our lives, pointing us toward the unfinished work of becoming. The shadow, the parts of ourselves we have rejected, suppressed, or never been allowed to develop, is not our enemy. The shadow is the dark side of our potential. It contains the rage that, properly channeled, becomes fierce advocacy. It contains the hunger that, properly directed, becomes ambition. It contains the wildness that, properly expressed, becomes creativity. Genghis Khan did not suppress his shadow. He integrated it. He was capable of extraordinary mercy and extraordinary violence. of profound loyalty and terrifying betrayal, of visionary creativity and absolute destruction. He was fully human, fully himself, and it was that completeness, that willingness to contain multitudes, that made him the force he was. Paragraph 18. I want to speak now about the people in your life who do not understand your calling. Because they exist, they almost certainly exist, and navigating their presence is one of the most essential skills of the chosen one's journey. These are the people who love you and want to protect you, and therefore want you to stay safely within the boundaries of the comprehensible. These are the people whose own unlived potential has calcified into cynicism, and who experience your aliveness as an accusation. These are the people whose relationship to you is built around a version of you that is comfortable and predictable, and who will resist sometimes fiercely any expansion that disrupts that comfortable version. These people are not your enemies. They are simply where they are in their own journey, and your task is not to convert them, not to drag them along, and not to shrink yourself to maintain their comfort. Your task is to love them from the distance that your growth requires. This is one of the most painful aspects of becoming, the grief of outgrowing relationships, environments, and identities that once held you. Genghis Khan left behind his enslaved life and his small tribal world. He could not have built what he built if he had remained loyal to smallness out of sentimental attachment. The chosen one eventually understands that the greatest act of love they can offer the world is not to remain what everyone expected, but to become what they were made to be. Paragraph 19. Let's talk about legacy, not the legacy you will leave after you die, though that matters enormously, but the legacy that is living through you right now. In this moment, as you breathe and think and feel and choose, you are the current expression of an ancient lineage of survivors, visionaries, lovers, warriors, healers, and builders. You carry within you the compressed wisdom of thousands of years of human experience. Every time you choose courage over comfort, you are honoring that lineage. Every time you choose truth over convenience, you are transmitting something forward into the future. Every time you choose to grow rather than to stagnate, you are participating in the evolutionary impulse that has been driving life forward for 4 billion years on this planet. This is not small. This is not ordinary. This is the most important thing any human being ever does, the daily, unglamorous, often invisible work of becoming more fully themselves in service of the whole. The Mongol Empire eventually fell. Every empire does, but the 16 million people alive today who carry Genghis Khan's genes are living proof that what matters most is not the structures we build, the empires, the institutions, the organizations, but the life we pour into them. The structures pass, the life persists. Your legacy is not what you create. Your legacy is who you become in the creating of it, and who you are becoming right now. In this season of your life, with all its difficulty and uncertainty and unresolved questions, is already something extraordinary.